Guys, let's get into the show. TJ, let's start at the quarterback position. The three guys at the top of our rankings, Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, Patrick Mahomes. How do you have your top three stacked?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have Lamar and Mahomes, the 1 and 2, pretty much all the time, right? So, I mean, I'd probably give Mahomes a slight bump over Lamar. And then I think probably I'll give Dak a slight edge over my favorite play of the week. But I'll go Pat, Lamar, and then Dak.
Okay, Sean, how do you have the top three stacked? Do you have Lamar, Dak, and Mahomes? Like I personally was kind of shocked when I did my projections and then saw that I had Dak ahead of Mahomes. But I mean, that's just how it went in my rankings. Is that how it went in your rankings?
No, and to be fair, it's still early in my rankings process, so Dak could pass him up. I think the loss of Blake Jarwin could hurt Dak more than we realize. Dalton Schultz really isn't a valid replacement for him. So that's a dynamic piece of this offense I think he's going to be missing. But, when it comes to Mahomes, they were definitely more run heavy than you would expect when they got up by 2 scores. And that's going to be a common game script for them. So the fact that they were so run heavy, they lean on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You can't really blame them. Worries me in a spot, against the Chargers where they're a touchdown favorite. I kind of want to see one more game where they have a bigger lead and see if they continue to run heavily. But yeah, I think it definitely lowers Mahomes' ceiling. So he's much closer to Dak this week than I would have expected.
Raymond, how do you have the top three?
Yeah, I was kind of with you. I was a little surprised, but Dak edged out Mahomes for that number 2 spot behind Lamar Jackson. But then I realized exactly why Dak Prescott edged out for Mahomes. And I mean, he has a shot to be the number 1 overall quarterback this week because you look at the opponent he's playing. And that opponent happens to be the Dan Quinn coach, Atlanta Falcons. So I'll just read you the passing stats for Russell Wilson last week. 35 attempts, 4 incompletions, 31 completions for 322 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and for good measure, another 3 runs for 29 yards. I mean, this Falcons defense, we knew it was going to be bad, but you compare that Falcons defense to the Chargers defense, which, is just stacked with talent, held Burrow in check for most of the game, stumbled on that last drive a little bit. But I kind of agree with Sean that in this particular game script, I think, you worry a little more about Mahomes having that ceiling game, whereas Dak, I mean, Jarwin or not, it's just like he has 3 of the top receivers in the game. Kind of similar setup to Seattle, which is not great at the tight end position either. So, I don't think throwing a Dalton Schultz is going to help anything, but he probably will just target CeeDee Lamb even more. And remember, those Rams cornerbacks were really good in that Sunday night game. So I don't even think we saw the full arsenal or really see the full offense unleashed, that Mike McCarthy offense. Because Amari Cooper was relatively held in check for most of that game. Of course, Gallup had the call go against him at the end and was saw a lot of Jalen Ramsey as well. So I really like Dak this week and wouldn't be surprised at all if he was right up there with Lamar when it's all said and done.
Yeah, it might be a situation where, like, obviously the Seahawks were letting Russ cook, but maybe it's more that the Falcons are just sort of like this restaurant with an open kitchen where they have a lot of visiting chefs who come in and, one night a week, they just cook their favorite meals and tear up that kitchen. That just might be the way it is whenever anyone is going against the Falcons. So Dak could cook this week. TJ, who is a quarterback that you are relatively high on in comparison to the consensus?
Yeah, we talked about those 3 guys, and those 3 guys are probably going to be the most popular this week. So looking at things from a DFS perspective, we could look at DraftKings pricing. I think Aaron Rodgers will be another guy that's pretty popular coming off of his big week. And even though Josh Allen had a really nice week in week 1, he was the QB3. I think he'll probably not necessarily go overlooked, but be under-owned because of the 3 guys we mentioned, plus Aaron Rodgers. Josh Allen's going to get a Miami defense that we just saw Cam put up 75 rushing yards on, which is obviously a huge part of Josh Allen's game. And the Bills offense, they're not the offense that we've seen with Josh Allen. Obviously they have Stephon Diggs, who's going to support that deep ball upside that we're going to get from Josh Allen and John Brown. But Brian DeBall had Josh Allen throwing the ball quick. He had him throwing the ball accurate. He had him throwing screen passes to his running backs. You're going to get the Josh Allen where he overthrows John Brown in the end zone. He had a couple fumbles. Those are random. He lost a passing touchdown worth of value with those fumbles, but that's not going to happen every week. But seeing them come out and throw those quick passes to John Brown and Diggs, and for him hitting on those, I'm really encouraged by this offense, one that I'm going to be targeting this week and probably all season, because I think just people's bias towards this team is going to take a long time to catch up.
Sean, who's the guy that you're relatively high on?
Yeah, so first off, I'm right there with TJ on Josh Allen. I loved his week 1 performance. Other than the John Brown missed touchdown and the 2 fumbles, you're going to get that with Josh Allen from time to time. But, he flashed the ceiling. I was thinking he had the potential of this year. I think Stephon Diggs will help unlock that. He threw for over 300 yards, so I think he has that Lamar Jackson type upside, especially if he's still running it 14 times a game like he did. So I love his GPP upside, I should say. Against the Dolphins, I could see a Josh Allen, Stephon stack going off here. And the other guy I want to highlight is Mitch Trubisky. He's my top streaming play this week at QB, which is more of a sign that it's slim pickings for the streamer people out there week 2. But he did look better. The first 3 quarters, obviously, he was pretty lackluster, but he came alive in that 4th quarter comeback. And I think the one thing I noticed is he just has more weapons surrounding him this year. I think Darryl Mooney could fill in that Taylor Gabriel role and stretch, the deep patterns. But I think Jimmy Graham, as much as I, shit on Jimmy Graham all the time, he is not great at tight end. He had Jesper Horsted and J.P. Holtz to throw to the second half of last season. So I think it gives him another red zone weapon. And I think if we see Trubisky unleash, with his rushing ability, especially this week, I think he has some QB1 upside. So I am ranked pretty high at QB 13 this week.
Raymond, who's the guy you really like?
I mean, from a straight up pricing perspective, I think Kyler Murray is a steal at 6.1K. He's behind about 10 other quarterbacks in DraftKings pricing, and Kyler Murray almost led the Sunday slate in rushing. Had a couple of kneel downs late, but really strong performance all around from him, going against that Washington football team defense that it's not great on the back end. They're gonna get pressure, but remember, now we're talking about Kyler Murray, a guy who can escape pressure. That's the same reason that he's able to give the 49ers fits a really high-quality defense every time they play, because their pressure doesn't necessarily impact him the way it would with a majority of other quarterbacks. So really like Kyler Murray, who threw for 325 yards in week 1 and had a big rushing day as well, almost got to 100. So love him. And then I think there's some sneaky, I agree with Sean, it's kind of a crapshoot for the streamers, but there are some sneaky guys just based on some terrible defensive performances in week 1. So, the Minnesota Vikings, we saw how they got torched. Phillip Rivers actually threw for over 360 against Jacksonville. This game could end up being a shootout. This might not be the Mike Zimmer defense that we're used to, at least not yet. So, he's at 5,900. And then you have Kirk Cousins in that same game going against Colts defense that allowed Gardner Minshew to go 19 of 20. So that game, we kind of have this perception of what those teams may be. And, the Colts is a run-heavy team and the Vikings is a run-heavy team with a good defense. But that just might not be the case, especially if the game script kind of goes off with one of the teams able to exploit the other's defense. So I think that's kind of a sneaky game stacking situation. And then Ryan Tannehill, 43 pass attempts against Denver in a 16-14 game. I thought he looked really good. I thought the play action was really strong. And the more of a sample size we're starting to get on Tannehill, I think it's becoming evident that the coaching in Tennessee is really helping. And, the way they can kind of feed Derrick Henry, and he's moving the chains even when he's having bad games. He's moving the chains, and then they're able to play action almost every play on early down, and we know how much play action increases efficiency. So even on a low-volume game, I think Ryan Tannehill could light up this Jaguars defense. And remember, this Jaguars defense probably going to struggle against the run too, which is only going to help Tannehill. And are they going to attempt another field goal for the rest of the season? Probably not. So you're getting some additional potential, red zone upside from Tannehill, who got that second touchdown because he was able to, on a fourth down play to Jonnu Smith. I think Tannehill's a guy that is probably going to continue to kind of post numbers that seem a little bit, regression prone and out of his league. But just watching Tennessee and what they did against a pretty good Denver defense in a tough environment, gives me a lot of optimism on that passing game.
All right, a guy I like quite a bit is Cam Newton. I was high on him last week. I'm going to continue to be high on him. Obviously not on the main slate, but just for normal season-long fantasy, I think he offers a ton of value. And that offense with the Patriots, maybe it's a situation where because they were playing the Dolphins, they were just able to run off a lot of plays. But I think they're still going to play fairly fast, even for a team that runs the ball. We saw with the Cam Newton Panthers, they would run around 64 plays per game. With the Patriots under Tom Brady, they would run around 67 plays per game. You put the two together, I think they ran 65 plays in week one. I continue to think that this will be an offense that, even though it's not dynamic in a way that people normally think of, it will still be one that provides a lot of value for Cam, even if no one else really benefits in that offense. So certainly interested in Cam Newton this weekend.
Can I jump in for a minute and say something about Cam? That if you're playing DFS GPPs, Yahoo does use the Sunday night game on their main slate, and there's actually a lot of value in Yahoo GPPs right now. They have some overlay, and I think a lot of people that are over there aren't as experienced. So by having that Sunday night game on your main slate, there's obviously a lot of leverage opportunities with late swap that I don't think people are implementing properly over there. So just a note there on Sunday night and Cam.
Great stuff there, TJ. Who are you relatively low on this week?
Not even just this week, but like from what I saw week one and moving forward, Tyrod Taylor and just the Chargers offense as a whole was one that I was really disappointed in. Tyrod was not somebody that I was on in cash, but someone that was pretty popular in cash. And a lot of that has to do with his rushing ability. And we didn't see it. I think he had 2 rushes for -2 yards or something like that, or -1 yard. And then one of the issues with Tyrod and his offenses when he was in Buffalo was that he spread the ball around. Now, targets are a talent stat. The best players are going to get targets, but Tyrod never had a 100 target player in Buffalo. And then we saw him spread the targets out almost perfectly evenly amongst his top 3 targets, and not including Eckler in that. So he's just giving me a lot of pause and reserve about that offense in general, especially if he's not going to be running the ball. He loses pretty much all of his fantasy value.
Yeah, entirely with you on that. Very disappointing to have him as a late quarterback option that you got in like super flex or 2 QB leagues, thinking that you got some value there. Evidently no value. Sean, who's someone you're looking to stay away from?
So I already mentioned, but Patrick Mahomes, I'm just a bit worried about his ceiling. I still think he's a great play, and I actually still have him as my QB2, but his ceiling is capped if they're going to be so run heavy when they get a big lead. So I'm a little bit worried about him against the Chargers. Another guy that I'm lowering quite a bit is Jared Goff. Just based on what I saw week one, that this offense looks like it's going to be pretty conservative, like a clock-eating, run-heavy type one. And even without Todd Gurley, they tend to favor giving carries inside the 5-yard line. I think that kills Goff's touchdown upside, which for somebody that doesn't really rush for many yards, he kind of needs that upside. So he's going to have a lot of empty 300-yard games, I think, of just very conservative, low ADOT type offense. So I'm down on him and a guy like Cooper Kupp as well. I tend not to overreact to week one too much, but it just was concerning seeing that was kind of their game plan. So I'm down on Goff overall.
Raybon, who are you staying away from?
Tom Brady at 6.5K. That's just too much for a quarterback that's came out really awful looking in week one against a defense that is pretty good, but also a defense that has been vulnerable to quarterbacks in the past, a defense that you should be able to kind of stay with in a shootout at least. And, I just thought Tom Brady's accuracy was off. I thought, he probably just hasn't fully picked up this offense without without a full, camp and preseason. And let's remember, Tom Brady was in the same offense for essentially 20 years almost, give or take, a couple of different variations, but, definitely extremely experienced in that offense. And we saw him really stumble down the stretch at the end of last season. And that's also a red flag because the man's 43 years old. He averaged under 6 yards an attempt over the last 10 games of last year. So there's just a lot of red flags for me not to, even against a shaky defense like Carolina, just not to really invest in a guy who's not going to run the ball too much. Obviously, Jimmy Garoppolo is another one. He's a guy that just is not playing with a full deck at his pass catching positions. Raheem Mostert's not going to break a 76-yard touchdown on a catch every week. And I think San Francisco is going to play really close to the vest while everyone gets healthy, because now they're playing a Jets team who, unlike Arizona, is just ill-equipped to force a shootout.
Okay, a guy I'm looking to stay away from is Desean Watson. I have him ranked number 9, which is maybe a little bit too low. If I'm, if I'm looking in the mirror, maybe it's too low, but I don't know. I think it's a tough matchup, obviously going against the Ravens, who have one of the best secondaries in the league. I think with their run-focused offense, the Ravens can control the clock. And so I could see fewer offensive plays for Houston. And then, just again, a situation, Deshaun Watson is without DeAndre Hopkins. And it's not to say that Hopkins' absence was the cause of everything that didn't go right with Houston's offense in the first week, but I'm sure it didn't help either. So I think there are just enough red flags there and enough good matchups for some of these other quarterbacks where I'm fine bumping Watson down the board a little bit.